All right. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where in the world you happen to be. My name is Christopher Harrison. Apologize, I'm a little bit late. And this is Code and Coffee, a 2-hour exploration and just, well, general chit chat when it comes to web dev and dev in general and whatever else it is that happens to come up here. So as a real quick bit of background here, and then I'm gonna say good morning to Chad. It's great to see a whole bunch of people already in there, and I'll say hi to everybody in just a second here. But as a little bit of background, this is Code and Coffee. So this is not going to be a traditional lecture type stream, that there's going to be no slides, there's no pre-canned demos or anything like that. That instead, we're going to continue building a site that we've been working on for the last couple of weeks. And don't worry if you haven't been here the last few weeks, you're here now. And that's all that matters. Sorry for hitting the mic there. You're here now. That's all that matters. So I'll share out the repository, and I also want to spend a little bit of time this morning as well, going through the code, and then we'll start to set the scene from there. But the big thing that I want to highlight is the fact that this is really designed to be an exploration. This is designed to be a two-way conversation. So please, please, please say hi in chat, ask questions as we go. And you're also going to notice that I'm 100% going to make mistakes and struggle at different times and probably just like learn on the fly here as we're going through this, because that is a big part of what it is that we're trying to do. That I'm doing real development here. This is exactly what everybody does when they sit down and write code. So that's what I'm doing here. So so that's all of that. I do have a new microphone. I'm looking over here at my levels. My levels look good. So if my audio doesn't sound quite right, please do let me know. But my levels do look pretty good over there. So I think I'm okay there. Actually, there we go. I think that might be a little bit better. Okay, cool. So let me say hi to everybody. So I see Todd in chat. So good morning, Tarsis, Georgie, Jorge. I'm totally mispronouncing that name, and I apologize. Jogi. That's going to be my final answer there, and I apologize if I'm mispronouncing that. Carlos, Grishma, Lawrence from LA. I used to live in San Diego, so about 7-hour drive, depending on traffic. Good morning to Javier from Mexico City. Good morning in Seattle. I'm also in Seattle, or more specifically West Seattle, which ironically is south of Seattle, but that's a different conversation. It's looking actually pretty decent outside, weather-wise, although apparently it is supposed to rain a little bit later today. Hello to I Love Math Academy. So, yep, as has been answered, this will be around about 2 hours. Good morning to Salisbury from Jacksonville. I've actually never been to Jacksonville. I've been to a couple of places in Florida, but never to Jacksonville. Jogi, I did get it right. Fantastic, cool. And hello from Brazil. Evan says, love the views, too bad about the bridge. If you're not from this area, West Seattle is sort of like an anomaly. It's anomaly probably isn't the right word, but it's a second peninsula that's again, ironically south of Seattle. And there's one main bridge, named the West Seattle Bridge, that leads in and out of here. That bridge is now out of commission, and very likely will be for the next 2 or 3 or maybe even 4 years. And so it's a lot of side streets now to try and get out of here and out to the rest of civilization, as it were. So it's a little bit interesting. The timing is kind of nice with everybody now working from home, that I don't have to commute out to Redmond, but it's still a little bit interesting. So yeah. Anyway, hi from Dubai. Andres from Sweden. I guess good evening out there. Belgahan, good morning. Good morning to Sharik, and good morning to Israel. Say, I do not read Hebrew, but good morning. And Jesse, you're not late at all. So good morning to Sabash, east side of Seattle representing there. That's good to see. So yeah, fantastic. Okay. Cool, cool, cool. All right. It's great to see everybody this morning. Hey! It's good to see you here, Pete. Pete's a run bud of mine. He's much faster than I am, but he's a run bud of mine out here in Seattle. So good to see you this morning. And then good morning to Eric. So yeah, assuming that's the right Peter. I mean, the first and last name match. So there's probably not a lot of Peter LaMonicas out there. So unlike Christopher Harrison, two just sort of generic names there. So anyway, cool. All right, so let's go ahead and let's get rolling here. So let's talk a little bit about what it is that we're building and so forth and so on. So first up, here's the GitHub repository that we've been using for the last few weeks. And so the website that we're building here, that's fantastic. It's great to see you here, Pete. The website that we've been building over the last couple of weeks has been this right here. So Love Dogs, so connecting dog lovers with other dog lovers. And right now, what we're doing is sort of just building this iteratively. So we've been building this over time, where we have been setting up a bit of an API, setting up a bit of a UI, and really just sort of kind of slowly going through this. And so right now what we have is we're using Bootstrap for this list here. We've got a list of various dogs here that right now just have ages. We're gonna go in and start adding more to this in a little bit. And then you've also got a little spot right here with register dog, where you can go ahead and register out the dog, provide the name, provide the age, hit register, and then this will go ahead and call a backend API that will then save the dog inside of a NoSQL database. If I'm running it locally, it's going to be on Mongoose, and if I'm running it remotely, it's going to be inside of Cosmos. At a high level, the main text, it just dawned on me, I'm not sharing my screen. There we go. That looks a little bit better. Sorry. There we go. Now I'm on the right screen. Okay, so anyway, yep. It's one of the really funny things about streaming is that depending on where you happen to be, there's sometimes like a 2 or even like 3 or 4 minute lag. And so it's always funny when I make a mistake or I haven't like switched screens, that it always takes a few minutes then for everything to start rolling in, to go, hey, wait a minute, you need to change your screen. So yeah, sorry about that. Okay, so now here's the app that we've been building. So there it all is. There's the list of items, and again, down at the very bottom there, the little registered dog popping up with a modal dialog, and then you can fill out the information, hit register, and then it will go ahead and save it. And again, it's using Mongoose locally and using Cosmos DB remotely when we're deployed out into Azure. So you can see all of this. You can see all of this right here. So pretty slick, pretty cool. Now, what I want to do to start off today is we have been working through we've been working through this app for a few weeks. And so what I want to do is I just want to spend a little bit of time kind of talking about the different moving parts that we have, because I know that our audience has started to kind of grow a little bit over the last few weeks. So I just want to spend a few minutes talking about what it is that we've got. So that way, if you are new here, that you can see what the different moving parts are, and then we'll go ahead and get on into it. So. Yeah. So Carlos says, maybe on another stream I could show the setup. Yeah, absolutely. That would actually be kind of fun. So in a nutshell, I'm using OBS. I've got a couple of cameras over here that I've got set up, a couple little lights, and so forth. I could absolutely go in and do that. Love Math Academy asks, what is the name of the live database? Oh, I'm using Cosmos. So Azure Cosmos DB, Mongo. There we go. Yeah, so I'm using very specifically Cosmos DB and the API for MongoDB. And this is allowing me to then use Mongoose to go ahead and connect out to it. So kind of using the normal tool that you would be using if you're doing Node, JavaScript, and all of that. So that's what I'm using behind the scenes if we're doing it live. So yeah, cool. All right. So let's take a look at our app here, and let me close all of this. So Cosmos DB, is it a managed service? It is. Yeah, it is. Platform as a service, PaaS. Yes. Yeah, PaaS. That's what that is. Yep. So cool. And Lauren says, nice setup on the audio, on the video, and the audio is clear. Okay, that's good to hear. Yeah, last week we were having some issues with that. So cool. All right, so let's go ahead and let's take a look at the overall structure of our app real quick. And I don't want to spend a lot of time on this because I know there's been a lot of people that have been here the whole time, but I do want to make sure that I just take a couple of real quick minutes here just to talk about the different moving parts. So what we've got is two main folders here, two key folders here. We've got API and we've got app. So our app folder here, this is going to be our front end, and our API over here, this is going to be our back end. So those are the two main folders where we've got our code. So inside of the app, what you're going to notice is I've got index HTML, and this is going to be our HTML for the front end. We are using Bootstrap here, mostly just because it's just easier to use a CSS framework than it is to go in and write a whole bunch of raw CSS. Like I could go in and do it, but I'd be spending an awful lot of time just doing CSS and just trying to align things. So I really don't want to do that. And then we've got index.ts, and this is the logic that's running on the client. And in a nutshell, what this is doing is it's grabbing all the dogs from the server and then displaying all of them out. So you can see the bit of code here to create each item and then display that out. And then you're also going to notice down below that we've got a setup for the form here. I'm going to talk more about this in just a second because there was a couple of things that I changed from before. So there's the little form, and this will then go ahead and post out the dog and then add that to the display. Now you're going to notice here. You're going to notice here that I'm not using. Excuse me. I have a little breakfast apparently still stuck in my throat there, giving me a little scratch. But anyway, you are going to notice that I'm not using any form of a framework yet. That right now I'm not using anything like Vue or React or so forth. And the main reason for that is because at least up until now, I don't need that yet. Like all that I'm doing is relatively basic stuff. I've got one list, I've got one main form, and that's it. So right now I just don't need the overhead of doing something like Vue or React. So I'm just not doing it. But we'll go in absolutely a little bit later in future episodes and start to add that in. But for right now, we just don't need it. And I'm a big believer in using tools when you need them, not just because you have them. So that's why I'm not using anything like React or Vue or otherwise. So I Love Math Academy recommends Tailwind CSS. Yeah, I've kind of peeked around a little bit at it. I don't know. I like Bootstrap. I don't know if that makes me a bad developer, but yeah. Anyway, so let's take a look at the server side here. The server side, we're using Azure Functions. I do want to highlight the fact that on Azure Functions, that it is it's a Node application. And so I can go ahead and use whatever Node libraries it is that I might want. So you'll notice that I'm using Mongoose here, which you see right there. And then you're also going to notice that up here inside my dogs folder, that here is here's the logic. And so I'm using Mongoose. And so I've got a schema here that's defining my dog. So I've set up my name. I've set up my age for the dog, and then down below is the bit of logic. Right now, I've just got post and get, so to create brand new items and to get right now all dogs. And we're going to go back and edit that so that way we can get an individual dog as well there. So we'll go back and update that. So get all dogs is going to return everything, and then create dog is going to post all of that. And all that's pretty straightforward Mongoose code. So again, if you want to see all the code, you'll notice all of that is out on GitHub. And if you're curious about Mongoose, you can go ahead and check out Mongoose there. That I think the docs on Mongoose are fantastic. I think their quick start is really nice, maybe a little too basic, but I think it's really nice. And then this schemas section, I find myself going back to this constantly whenever I'm doing something inside of Mongoose. It's such a fantastic reference that Mongoose's docs, I think, are so good. I don't find myself going to Stack Overflow all that often when I can't figure out how to do something that usually I can find it inside of inside the docs here. And I think that's a pretty high praise, saying, hey, I don't need to go to Stack Overflow. I can find it in the docs. So cool. All right. So let's keep on keeping on. So anybody who was here last week, where we closed off last week is this. Let me open up my app. There we go, and close that. Okay, cool. Yeah. So here's where we left off last week. Is what we did is we created this this modal dialog right here, which sadly is still giving me a couple little issues, but for right now I'm not going to worry too much about it. That's going to create a dog. And so what we wanted to do with this is we wanted to use HTML5 to help us out. So one of the great things, or two really great things about HTML5, first of all, is the ability to set up types on your inputs. That this is, I know I harped on this a couple weeks ago when we last broadcast, but I'm going to harp on it again because it's just that important. Using the appropriate data types for your input controls for HTML5, do it. Like it boggles my mind how often I will see forms where everything is input type equals text. And this is a real problem. And we as web developers, we need to start getting better at this. That HTML5 supports a whole host of various types for input controls, numbers, URLs, email addresses, all sorts of cool things. And there's so many advantages to using that first of all, you're going to get baked in validation. That if I say input type equals number, then this is now going to be a number. That's the only thing that this is going to accept. If you try to put in characters, alpha characters, then that's not going to work. Second of all, for screen readers, they can really help out because now they're going to know what the data types are. So when they prompt out to when they prompt out to the user, that they're going to be able to help prompt the user as to the data type. So yeah, Carlos highlights, it's all about that user experience. Evan highlights the fact that type equals color gives you an awesome hex picker. Yeah, start using them. And then on top of that, if you're using a phone here, and this is still by far the most common client that people are going to be using is going to be their phone. You've got, of course, that small keyboard. And so if I say number, what's going to happen is when I hit that control on my phone, my keyboard is now going to show me the number pad instead of the full keyboard. Or if you use email address, it's now going to give you that little @ sign on the keyboard. And those little things really help that user experience, like Carlos highlights there. So 100%, I know I harped on this before, but it bears harping on one more time here, that go ahead and still use it. Now, I Love Math Academy does highlight something here, which is the validation doesn't necessarily work on all browsers. And that's universally true. Like, regardless of the type of validation that you're using, it's not always going to work on the client. And that's going to be true if you're doing HTML5. It's going to be true if you're doing it with JavaScript or really anything else. That there's always going to be browsers that maybe don't support it. There's different ways that the JavaScript could be disabled or otherwise. So you never can count on the data that's coming in to be valid. And that's why on the server, you always need to make sure that you're validating your data. And this is one great advantage to using something like Mongoose here, is that with Mongoose, I can go ahead and indicate what the data structure needs to look like here. And now this is going to handle my validation on the server as well. So you always still need to validate on the server, but if I can do it on the client, I want to do that because it's again going to give a better experience. And it's also going to avoid round trips, that if I can figure out that data isn't valid out on the client, then I want to go ahead and do that because now I'm not going to get the round trip to the server. And then I'm also just going to have better performance. So yeah. So Lawrence asked the question, is that an engineering trade-off about the validation? And the answer to that is no, that there's really no trade-off, that you always have to do validation on both the client and on the server. That if you only ever do it on the server, the advantage is that it's always going to run. But the disadvantage is that it's only ever going to run on the server. And so if somebody fills out the form incorrectly, they're going to be able to submit that up, and then they're going to have to wait for the response to come back. And depending on like the speed of the connection that they're going to have, that's going to potentially be a little bit slow. It's now going to be extra server requests that didn't actually need to happen. And then on top of that, HTTP, HTTPS is just, it's a big, slow protocol. It just is. So if I can avoid round trips, I always want to do it. So I could just do it on the server, but I'm going to have all of those downsides. And again, if I just do it on the client, as has been highlighted, that can get skipped. So you always have to do it in both places. So it's not so much an engineering trade-off as much as it is that you just have to do it in both places. It's just, it's the way that it works. So yeah, I think developers now care too much on developing new frameworks, libraries, and even the basic stuff has not improved that much. Yeah, so for example, the idea of not relying on front end, why is that? So yeah, Pete sums that up really quick. Yeah, that client-side validation is user experience and a little bit of performance, and then the security part happens on the back end. I Love Math highlights developers care too much about developing new frameworks and even basic stuff all out on the client. So why is that? there's a lot of history there. And I think I know what you're asking here is, why is it that we're seeing so much work that's now being done out on the client side? And I think part of that is because of the fact that clients have become so much more powerful that, back, long time ago, you had browsers that really weren't all that robust, and you had systems that weren't necessarily all that performant. So there wasn't a lot of ability for me to offload some of that some of that work out to the client. And that's of course changed over time, that as browsers have become more robust, as client systems have become more performant, then we've been able to offload a lot more of that. And so again, it's going to give you that better experience, because if I can do an awful lot of work without having to constantly round trip back to the server, or maybe just send the individual pieces of data back and forth, and I don't need to send, a full page down, that's going to give better performance, and it's going to give a better user experience. So I think that's a big part about why that's happened. So yeah. So Neil just asked the question, how experienced is the audience here? It varies. That every time that I've done this, I've had some people that are very, very new to web, and I've had some people that are super experienced in this space. And what I always try to do with this stream is to do my best to welcome everybody, and as best as I can to try and answer all questions without allowing myself to go too far off the beaten path. So anyway, okay. Another real quick sip of coffee. And let's go ahead and let's take a look. Yeah. So, yeah, this is where I want to be. Okay. So there was a couple of little things that that came up here in the last time that we broadcast. That one of the things that we wanted to take advantage of is we wanted to add in some validation into our HTML. And so you'll notice that we have the ability to go min-max on number. And one thing that we actually didn't do is we also have the ability to add in required as well, which, by the way, you can actually just go ahead and just say required there, and just say required there, and that does mark it as required. It honestly, it hurts my soul to do it that way. I typically like to type out required equals required, or required equals true, just because of the fact that I spent a lot of time doing XML back in the day, for anybody who remembers XML. And one of the things about XML is that if you just put in an attribute, XML complained. And so you had to always have a key value pair there. And so I really like to have that key value pair. I think it just reads better if it's there, although the HTML5 spec does say that you can just do that you can just go ahead and just mark it as required, and just leave it at that. So I don't know, that just doesn't look right to me. It just doesn't. So anyway, so you do have that. But one of the catches with HTML5 validation is that it's only going to work when the form is submitted. And normally when you submit a form, what it wants to do is it wants to take that entire form and send that up to the server, and then bring that back. And that's not what we want to have happen here, that we're only using the form just to give us our controls and our validation, and that's it, that we don't want to do a full submit. So what you can do then, and I added this in this morning, is you can go ahead and just simply say prevent default. And so what this will do is it will tell the form, don't submit. So it won't do what it normally wants to do, which is, again, that full round trip to the server. And then the next line here is going to be our guard clause, which is going to say, hey, if it's not valid, stop. Which is what that part right here is going to do. So we're just going to check validity, and if it's not valid, then it's going to return false. Now, you are going to notice this little part right here, this e.target as HTML form element. So I'm using TypeScript here, and I love TypeScript. Anybody who's seen me talk about web dev or do presentations knows how much I love TypeScript. But one of the little quirks about TypeScript is in its efforts to try and catch bugs, it's going to always look at data types. And if it can't figure out what a data type is, or if it looks like you're using a wrong data type or using a wrong method or using a wrong property on a wrong data type, it's going to yell at you. So if I do this, if I go in and I say e.target, so e.target, let's talk about this for just a second here. E, which is being passed in right up here, this is going to be my event args. So this is whatever it is that's being passed in from the event. And so I can actually go get the control, which in my case is going to be the form, by using e.target. So I can say something like this. I could say const form equals e.target. But the problem that I'm going to run into here is that this is just going to come back as event target. One of the things about setting up event handlers, of course, is that this could be wired up to anything, that this could be wired up to a text box, it could be wired up to a button, it could be wired up to literally anything, so that this event target is going to be relatively generic. So my check validity here, let me just kind of keep refactoring this. My check validity, this works, but it's only going to work on a form. And right now, as far as TypeScript can see, there's no guarantee that this is a form. Now, there's a couple of different ways that I can get around this, that I could just go in and disable the checking and just let it do its thing. Don't do that, because if you're doing that, then why are you using TypeScript? You could also do something like this, where I could say as any. And I see a lot of new TypeScript developers do this. Again, if you're not familiar with TypeScript, again, TypeScript is a superset of JavaScript. And among all of the different amazing things that TypeScript is going to bring to the table is it's going to bring a typing system with it. So it's always going to be looking at what your variables are and what the data types are and so forth, and make sure that you're using all of them correctly. And this in and of itself catches a full class of bugs that wind up being raised inside of JavaScript, that I'm so much more efficient writing in TypeScript than I am in JavaScript because of that exact reason. That with TypeScript, I'm always going to know what's available to me. It's going to catch typos and so forth. The problem, again, is this type of a situation where if I'm using the data type incorrectly, it's then going to not know how to handle that. So that's why I'm getting the red squigglies. So I'll see a lot of new TypeScript developers that just keep using the keyword any, because any basically just makes this JavaScript. It's basically now just JavaScript, because now, sort of like the name implies, that could be any data type. And you really don't want to get into the habit of doing that. Yes, every now and then you do need to use this. Every now and then you do need to just like shove it into this any container so that way you can do something that you know that works, that TypeScript is just not going to be able to figure out, and there's just not going to be an easy way for you to tell TypeScript about it. And that's fine, but those are going to be relatively rare instances. And I see a lot of new TypeScript developers lean on that way too much. And so at that point, all that you're doing is you're just writing JavaScript, but just with some additional little bits of TypeScript. You don't want to get into that habit. So what we want to do instead is we want to make sure that we're doing proper conversions. And so that's what this little as will do for us, is it will go ahead and do the cast. And so now you're going to notice I've got no red squigglies. You'll notice that I now get full IntelliSense here based on it being a form, that now it knows that it's a form. And now I know that that check validity is there. So that's what was going on there. Just break that apart into two different lines and away we go. So yeah, Carlos highlights the fact, notice that I changed the event listener to the form. Yeah, I absolutely did. Yep. Yeah, I went back and did that this morning. So yep. Yeah. Yep. Cool. So I'm just kind of getting caught back up on chat there. Yeah. Basically, I'm gonna TLDR this whole conversation on client-side validation, server-side validation as this. Basically, never trust anything from the client. So anything that you're doing on the client is really just convenience. It's really just to help make the user's life a little bit better. But you never want to trust any data that's coming in from the client. You never want to trust any of the code that's run there. So yeah. Anyway, okay, yeah. So don't use any. So that's what I'm now doing here, and then we'll display out the server dog, and then that now works. And and then the last little thing to highlight here is I'm also using Snowpack to go ahead and keep building my little site. And so now, come over here, and now my site is working just fine. So cool. All right. So there we are. Let's see. What do I want to do now? I want to take a sip of coffee. I know I want to do that. Yeah, +1 on any, like the fact that I pointed out, yeah, don't use the any keyword. Yeah, it's something I see so often. Like if for anybody who's old enough to remember when .NET first came out, you had a lot of VB6 developers that were, making the move into doing VB.NET and doing .NET. And what they really wound up doing is they just wound up writing VB6 code in VB.NET. So they really weren't actually taking advantage of anything that .NET had to offer. So sort of that same thing here is make sure that you're actually using TypeScript. If you're using any, you're probably doing the wrong thing. I'm not going to say always, but I'm going to say probably. So yeah, Carlos says you confess use any on jest tests. Yeah, we've all been there. It's okay. This is a judgment-free zone. We all write bad code. It's okay. All right. Anyway, yeah, so let me, where do I want to go from here? So what I wanted to do today is I wanted to keep updating the user interface. I wanted to update the model, and then I also wanted to, what did I mark? I don't even remember. What are my goals? And debug is needed. Yeah, deploy to static web apps. Okay, let's go ahead and do that. Unknown can sometimes be a slightly better alternative. Yeah. Okay, let me go ahead and deploy this out. So let me do this. Git status, what have I got? I've got my index and then a couple of items there. I'm going to say git add dot git commit fixed modal, and then git push. What branch am I on? I'm on main. That's fine. I'm just going to say git push. We'll just push right to main. Okay. And so now what this is going to do behind the scenes is one of the texts that I'm using, you can see it listed up above, is I am using, chugga. I am using static web apps. And so we can actually see, where's my code coffee? Yeah, we can actually see that here is all the resources that I have on Azure. There is my static web app. And the way that my static web app works is through a GitHub action. And so this little action is now actually running and deploying my code. If I go into actions, I can actually see it in action right here. Dad jokes, nothing but dad jokes. And I can see it all deploying out. One thing that I do want to highlight, if you're not already familiar with Azure Static Web Apps, is that this is going to go ahead and run all of my npm build and my npm install commands and so forth. So if you're using something like TypeScript, which does need to be compiled or transpiled into JavaScript, that this will go ahead and run all of that for you. So this is now handling all of that deployment, and then this is just going to take it a last probably minute or so to finish that that final push out into production. And then, yep, there we go. That'll be live. And so now there is my little site. Just going to take a second there. There we go. And so there is all of my dogs, and I can go ahead and register a new dog, and then that would be listed here. Okay. Now, right now, what our interface does is if you click on this little OK, or this, I'm going to do that sentence in English this time. If you click on one of these items, right now what this is doing is it's just alerting the text that's inside of there, which isn't necessarily the best thing. So I would like it to give us a modal dialogue of some variety that's going to better display out the text, the data that is inside of the dog. So I want to make that a little bit more robust. But the other big thing as part of that is I also want to make my data all up a bit more robust. So let's go back into our server side, and let's add in one more property here. So one really nice thing about NoSQL is the fact that you can always go back and change your schema almost at will here. I don't want to say that you could, just constantly coming in here and modifying things, but you've got a lot of flexibility here that I have a rather snarky friend of mine who once said that he doesn't like to use NoSQL just because he feels like it's used an awful lot by people who are just too lazy to do relational databases, where you now need to spend a lot more time laying out how you want your data to look. And when you start making changes, things become a lot clunkier when you're doing relational data. And I mostly just roll my eyes at him because I really like the agile capabilities here. I really like being able to go, you know what, we've got name, we've got age. I would also like to be able to add in a description here as well. And so now I can go ahead and set my type to be a string. And I could set my max length to be, let's just say, 1,000, and I could set my min length to be, let's say 50, and I could go ahead and set my maybe required to be true, and whatever else it is that that I might want. Oh, and I always like this, trim true. There we go. Cool. All right. So now I've just added on that that property there. And again, this is one just great advantage to using both Mongoose and NoSQL, is that I've got this ability here where I can just go in and add in whatever properties it is that I might want here. So now I've got my cool little description. So now I want to go back over here to my index page, and let's add in a spot in our form for the description. Let's go ahead and just do a real quick copy and paste. By the way, if you're not familiar, Alt-Shift-F will automatically do format there, which I'm a huge fan of. So, yep. All right. And then one other great feature, if you're not already familiar with this in VS Code, and I want to say this also works in Sublime and a couple of other places, is if you highlight something. First of all, you're going to notice that in VS Code, I automatically get the light highlight of every single other word that matches. Now, fortunately or unfortunately, depending on your scenario, it is case insensitive. So that does sometimes cause small problems, but it is now highlighting all of the other words. And so what's really cool is that I can actually just go Control D, Control D, Control D, Control D. D as in Delta. And now what you're going to notice is that it's highlighting every single instance as I keep going through, and it will actually go back up to the top and start back down again. And now if I highlight all of that, let's do this one more time. And now I'm just going to grab the ones that I want. Boom, boom. Now I can go ahead and just change this, change this. So now I can just go in and I can say description. And so now all instances are set as description. Now, one little thing to keep in mind here is you're going to notice that I effectively now have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cursors here. And so any change at all that I now make, if I just keep typing, it's going to be on every single one of those 5 cursors. And again, sometimes that can be extremely powerful, and there's times when I really love that. But you do need to just bear in mind that if you go in and you make a change like this, and you now want to get back to one cursor, hit escape, and that will bring you back. And I'll be honest, I usually hit escape like 5 times. If you're anything like me, and I know I am, I'm just not always certain that a key press is taken. So I'll just hit escape like 5 times here just to make sure that that has been turned off. And so now I've updated everything to be description. And then I can go ahead and just change the casing on that one to be a capital D. So it should be case sensitive. Yeah, you know, yeah, or at the very least, it'd be nice if like, maybe if I hit like Control Shift D or something like that, that I could do case sensitive there or something. So yeah, I don't know. There are times when I like it as case insensitive. There are times I want it as case sensitive. It varies. Okay. So, yep, there we go. And let's go ahead and say, there's that. And then now, oh gosh, that's right. This is going to be different. This needs to be a text area. Let me see. Do I have text area? Okay, cool. Let's say dog description, and then my ID of dog description. And then my calls of 30 and my rows of 10. Yeah, that'll work. Okay. One of the little things about text area You know, I think we often forget, I'm just going to clean that up. I'm just putting in a text area for our description. One of the things I think we often forget about HTML is, quite frankly, like how old HTML is. Like, this has been around for a very, very, very long time. And we always need to remember the fact that that HTML was honestly originally written to share research papers. And so, for example, that's why you have like H1 through H6, because that's a very common way to write out research papers with different headers and so forth and so on. Like, that's why those things exist. And so as a result, you will always notice these types of quirks here where my multi-line input box is text area. And that's a big part of the reason why, is because of the fact that it's, again, HTML, it's relatively old here. So that's what's going on. So that's why I need that, that text area. And then let me make sure class equals form control for my bootstrap. Let's go ahead and make sure I've got that. Okay, cool. All right. So let's go ahead and hit save. Let me bring back up my locally running instance. Just going to do a little cleanup. And let's hit register dog. Yeah, there we go. That looks pretty good. Yeah, my little description. And I can now start entering all of that in. Oh, that's funny. All right. You're noticing that it's got some text in there. Oh, because I've got the carriage return inside of text area. So that's why it was giving me an error. I want to make this display a little bit better on my screen. Let me... there we go. Yeah, Pete makes the joke that marquee is very important when publishing academic research. So is Blink. I mean, you've got to catch people's attention there. Marquee and Blink, really showing our age here. Yes, HTML white space. Every now and then, it becomes a thing. All right. Anyway. There we go. Now my description looks a little bit better. Yeah, I don't know if anybody caught that. It was real subtle. But what I had done originally is I had started my text area here, and I had put it down here. And so what happened is HTML was now reading all of this as content to go inside of that text area. So when I go back to my browser here, hit register dog, you'll notice that when I click inside of description, my cursor, I don't know how well it's showing up on the screen, but my cursor is actually right here when I click inside of there. And that's a little bit funny. And you might be wondering, well, why in the world is it doing that? And it's because of white space. That with the text area, the way that I put in default value is just by typing it in. And so if I, now save that, go back, hit register dog, now you'll notice that there's my default value on my description. So that's what was happening there. So just need to make sure that that's empty. So yeah, let's go ahead and there we go. Describe the dog in a couple of sentences. Let's make sure that we've got that. Cool. All right. Excellent. So that looks good. So now let's come back over here. Let's go ahead and hit register. And now everything looks good. So we've got our name, we've got our age. By the way, you'll notice those little items right there are because of the number. And now we've got our description. And now we can go ahead and cancel and register, and away we would go from there. Okay, now what I would also like to do here is I want to make sure that we've got at some point the ability to do an edit, and we've got the ability to do a display. And I think just trying to decide here. What do I want to do? I think what I want to do is, I'm just trying to decide. I think what I want to do for right now, and I'm open to input here, but I think for right now, what I want to do is I want to make it so that if you click on an item, let's set this as an edit screen. And I want to set this as an edit screen because it will actually give us the ability to do two things. It will give us the ability to do a get of an individual item, which does mean we are going to have to update our API, which we'll take a look at in a minute here. And then it will also give us the ability to actually then push that out as an update as well. So I think that's the way that I want to do this. I think the way that I want to build this is if you click on one of these dogs, that it will then pop up that modal dialog. It'll be pre-populated. We'll go ahead and update the button text down at the bottom to say update dog. When you hit save, it will then go ahead and do the update. So that's where I want to go with this. That's what I want to do, is I want to make it so that you can pull the item down and then away you go. Okay. Now, right now, in my code, on the client side, I've got an array of dogs. And right now I actually do have on the client side the name and the age and the description and so forth. And I could certainly leave it like that. But there is a little bit of an issue that I have right now, that there is there's a caching problem that I have here, because if I have a change on the server, that's now not going to be reflected on the client. And so it's possible that some data might have been updated on the server that I'm not going to see here. And there are some different things that I could do with like WebSockets and so forth to help streamline all of that, but I'm not going to get that deep into it. And on top of that, if you're getting larger details of an item, quite typically, you're going to want to go grab that from the server anyway. So this is sort of a nice opportunity for us to add in a get of an individual item. So that's the direction that I'm now going to go. So I'm going to add on the get portion of the API. In fact, here, let me update my goals here. Is I'm going to add on the update API for get and put. So both getting an individual item and then updating it. We have now updated the model, so I can go ahead and put a check next to that. That looks good. And then we've actually sort of deployed it, but I'm going to leave that the way that it is for right now. So I think that's what I want to do here. So I think that sounds good. Chat's been quiet for a little while, so I'm just going to pause for a second, make sure people are still out there. Otherwise I just get lonely. Is anyone still out there? Is it just me? Okay. Carlos is still here at least. Fantastic. Okay. So, just thinking about marquee behavior equals alternate. Oh, that's funny. I love it. Okay. Anyway, so let's go back here to our API. So the way that we built this is we set this up for right now for post and for get. Excellent. Okay. Glad to see that people are still here. So hi Grishma, hi Todd. Okay. Now, the way that we've built our, but you haven't been trolling at all. You've been wonderful. So But anyway, so the way that we've built our get at the moment is this is now just getting all dogs. Now, remember that our server-side code is using Azure Functions. And the way that we set up Azure Functions is a little bit different than the way that we might set up Express or Restify or like Flask or something like that. Like if I was doing, say, Express, normally what I would do is I would go ahead and say get, and then whatever my path is, and then res, and then away I'd go from there. And if I wanted to add on an item, such as the ID, I would go ahead and put that there. Mary's still here? Hey, I think I remember you from last week. That's fantastic. And Johanan, good to see you still here. So this is normally the way that you would do this inside of Express or Restify or something like that. And unfortunately, Functions doesn't operate that way. That the way that functions work is each individual function is designed to work with one tiny, small operation. And as a result, it's not expecting necessarily a bunch of different calls, much in the same way that like Express would. So we need to go in and start like adding in a little bit of extra code for it. So that's why, for example, you see the post and the get here on the switch, and then we've got our little helpers down here. So if I now want to differentiate this get, and I want to have a get all and then a Mark's not here. If I want to set up a get all and a get one, this does require me to write a little bit of additional code here. So let me do this. Azure Functions, HTTP trigger binding. Okay. I think this is where I want to be. Yeah, this is exactly where I want to be. Okay. Mostly. So I'm trying to find the right doc. I know what I need to write here, but I just want to find the right doc so that way I can share this out. HTTP and webhooks. There we go. Okay. Sorry, it took me a minute. Yeah, this is what I want. Okay, I just wanted to find the right doc so that way I could show off what it is that that I'm talking about here. So here's what we're gonna want. What we're gonna want is a route here where I'm gonna be able to say API dogs and then the ID of the dog. So this is what I want to be able to set up. Unfortunately, right now, all that I've got is the ability to go whack API, whack dogs, that I don't have the ability yet to pass in the ID. So that's the part that I'm now going to need to add in. And normally you would just add this in JavaScript, and that's not the way that this works in Functions. In Functions, the way that this works is you're going to update the function JSON file and update the available route inside of here. Now you'll notice that the syntax here is very familiar, that if you've ever done Express or Flask or really almost anything that does some form of routing, this syntax is pretty similar to that, where what you're going to do is that's the hard-coded name. So in my case, it's going to be dogs. This is now going to be the name of the parameter that's going to get passed in. So whatever that might be, my parameter. And then this is now going to become the data type for you to go in and specify. So this can say like alphanumeric or integer or whatever it is. And that question mark, by the way, at the end, this is going to become important for us, is then going to mark this as optional. So you can access it there. Now, what's also really nice is that this little name of category, this little name of ID, both of those are now going to become available under my binding data, and then whatever the name happens to be. So the ID, so I can read that there. So there is how I can go in and set up that additional route there. So let's go back to code. Let's go ahead and add in, there's my function JSON. Let's go ahead and set up my route. And then I want this to be dogs, and I'm just going to say ID question mark like that. Cool. And so now here's what I can do. So on my get, right now I've just got it set for get all dogs. So I'm going to give you all dogs if what you do is you say, just simply with a get verb, dogs. But if you give me an ID, so in other words, you say dogs, whack, and then some ID. Now I just want to get you an individual dog. So this is now going to be await get dog. We'll just say get dog. There we go. And we'll just pass again in the context. So that way we can just use it that way. Now, the way that we're going to differentiate is we're just going to look for that ID. So we'll say if context binding data dot ID. Then we'll go ahead and we'll do that. Otherwise, we will do that. There we go. Okay, so get one dog if you give me an ID, get all dogs if you didn't. So this is the way that we're now going to wire this up. Again, granted, if we were doing this with normal Express or something like that, it'd be a little bit cleaner, but that's not what we have. What we have is this, and this is just fine. So now let's go ahead and set this up. So we'll say async function get dog and our context. And now we'll go ahead and use await dog model, find by ID, and then my context, binding data, and then my ID. Now, what this will do is find by ID will either return back the item that it finds, or it will return back null. So I can now say if there's a dog, so in other words, we found the dog, then fantastic. We'll go ahead and say context res equals, and then we'll say body, and we'll just simply set that equal to the dog, and then we'll set our header. I'm just gonna copy that, make my life a little easier. There we go. Otherwise, no dog found. So of course that should be a 404. So we'll say context res equals, and then we'll just say body And this will be no dog found. And then my status will be a 404. Okay, cool. So now I've set up my API to get an individual dog. This will return back the entire dog. And again, if not found, we'll set up a status of 404. So let's go ahead and test this here. So I'm going to localhost 7071 API dogs. Okay. So there are all the dogs that we have. One of the little downsides that we do have with Mongoose is the fact that the IDs are ugly. You know, I don't want to use IDs. I think I'm going to get away from using IDs. I think instead I want to use the name. Because if I use the name now, then our URL could become / Roscoe. And I think that's going to be much better than using the ID. Now that I'm seeing this ID, I don't want to use this. That's ugly. Let's use the name. And one really nice thing about using the name, I'm actually just changing my mind right here on the fly, is the fact that we did mark this as unique. So we know that all of the names are going to be unique. So all of that's going to be just fine. Yeah. Let's not use the ID. Yeah, let's use names. Names is going to be much better. Okay. Or name plus age. Yeah, we could do that, but our names are unique. So we'll be okay with just that. So let's go ahead and let's say name alpha. So that'll be alpha numeric characters. There we go. So let's update that. And now let's come back over here and let's update this. So instead of ID, it's going to be name. And now let's go ahead and update this. So I'm going to say, yeah, so everyone says not object ID madness or madness. Yeah, well, that's all right. And then John mentions only if all dog names are unique. And that is true. Yeah, so I did, when I set up my schema, I did mark my names as unique. So I am going to be okay here because of the fact that my names are unique. This would only work the way that I've set it up if this is going to be unique. As Carlos mentioned, you might be able to do some form of like name plus age, or maybe like name plus city or something like that to make it unique. But in my case, my simple example, I've already marked this as unique. So let's just do it that way. All right. So let's go back here. Context data name. And then now, let's go ahead and say find one. This is what I want. And so on my conditions, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say name, and this needs to equal name. That needs to equal, oh, can I just do it that way? I can. Well, that'll work. Okay, equals context, binding data, name. There we go. Okay. Yeah, that looks they're all good dogs, Brent. Anyway, so here is my sorry, I'm just tickled. Okay. Anyway. So here's my find one. And the way that you do searches inside of Mongoose is by setting up a JSON object where you've got the property, and then if you just want to do equals, then you just do the colon and then whatever value it is that you want to specify from there. So my find one is just going to give me back one item. If I remember, I think it returns the first if there's multiple. Yeah, it doesn't say. I'd have to go check the full docs. I can't remember what it does if it finds multiple. I want to say it returns null if multiple are found, but I don't remember. Let me just go peek real quick. I don't want to code in an error here. Find one. What do you do? Finds one document. Is first one? Okay, I'll take your word for it, Evan. All right, first one. And that's going to be fine. And again, if null, then it would just return null. So all the rest of my code should work just fine. So yeah, so I saved it. Let's go back over to here, and now where's my API? Okay, so now in theory, did I not? Oh, you're not updating when I save. Weird. npm run start. Okay. I'm going to try and clean up 2 error messages here real quick. Local settings, JSON. I don't remember. Oh, and you don't have it IntelliSense. All right, then I'm not going to worry about that error message, but I do at least want to get rid of the connection one. Sorry, I'm just trying to get rid of at least a couple little error messages that this is giving me when it starts up. I just want to get rid of that one. There we go. Okay. All right. In any event, let's go ahead and now give this a shot. So now let's go ahead, Roscoe. There we go. Okay. That looks so much better. Yeah. Yeah, that's going to look so much better than having the ID. So cool. All right. So now that will work, and that's just going to look better. Okay. So now let's go in and let's update our UI here. And I'm going to be honest, I'm not 100% certain how to do this. So we're going to figure this out a little bit together. So here's my modal. There's that. And so what I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to show this dynamically when we click on an item. Can I just do this? Through here? Yeah, I can. Okay. So I think that text is big enough. All right. So here's what I'm going to do. You'll notice right here on the button, and let me sort of highlight what's going on here, is when I click on register dog, this is now bringing up this modal dialog. And the way that that's bringing it up is actually not because of JavaScript, but rather because there's an option right here for data toggle of modal, and then a data target of register modal. So what I can do is I can actually just wire this up without adding in event handlers here. So when we create the list items here, display dog, create element A, my href. Yeah. So now here's what I can do is I can say, I'm just going to paste both of those there for reference, is I can say dog UI set attribute, and I want data toggle modal, and then dog UI set attribute data target, and then this will be register modal. I know I have a typo. I'll fix that in a second. There we go. Okay, and let me put in a real quick comment on that. Register modal for dogs. Okay. Cool. All right. So there's that. And so now, when we click on it, now what we want to do is we want to set up the form. So let's go ahead and set up the form. So how's that going to look? That is going to look like this. We want document get element by ID. So I want my dog name. And I need to do I need to do a cast here. Where am I? There we go. Dot value equals dog name. Oh, you know what else I need to do? I need to update my interface here. Description string. There we go. All right. And so now there's that. And then let's go ahead and say age. Oops. And let's do age. Description. Okay. What are you complaining about? You're complaining about, yeah. Okay. ToString. There we go. Okay. Yeah, it was yelling at me because value wants a string, so I just need to tell it ToString. All right. So I think I've got this right. I think I've got this so that this will open up the modal. This will now set up the form. Now we are still going to need to add in a little bit of additional code here so that when it's submitted, that it's going to do a put and update the value as opposed to posting a new one. But we can do that in a minute. So yeah, so there's that. Let's go ahead and let's come back over here and let's click on the item. Hey, look at that. Okay. And our description is undefined, which we kind of expected because we don't have the description yet. So pretty cool. We've got that now working. I'm amazed that that worked the first time. I wasn't exactly sure that was going to come together. Hey, every now and then, right? Hey, we all need to just enjoy those moments where you're not 100% certain whether or not something's going to work, and you go, hey, let me give this a shot, and it works. Those are great moments. Those are great moments. It's sort of like golf, that I golfed for many years, and then I eventually just gave it up just because I decided I didn't need that level of frustration in my life anymore. But there's this thing in golf where you'll just hit one great shot at least once during your round, and that will be the shot that will then just get you back out there the next time. I think in a lot of ways, software development is very similar, that you'll do something and it'll just work the first time, and then voila, it keeps bringing you back. How's my stream? I'm getting a lot of red over here. Getting a lot of drop frames as well. This is not good. Okay. Your first hole-in-one with golf. I've never had a hole-in-one, but I did manage to sink one from about 130 with an 8-iron. I was pretty proud of myself. So, but anyway, yeah. Okay. It looks like it's good. All right. Cool. All right. So let's get back to it then. So there is that, and so now what we want to do is we want to update register here so that if there's already values that have been provided, that this is now going to do a put rather than a post. Let's see, what's going to be the easiest way to do this? Because we're using the same form. And I also need to make sure that if we cancel it, that it's going to, go back to post. All right, let's think this through for a second here. What do we need to do? So if somebody clicks on an item here, we're going to be in a state where now we're doing an update. This is now where something like Vue would really help, because now I could set state and start doing some better things there. So what we want to do is we want to set a state so that we're now doing an update rather than a create new item. Otherwise, what we want to do is we want to still leave it as a post and do a new thing. So, what's a good way to do this? Because this is all set for post, and it's basically all going to be the same code. It's just we're going to put instead. Just going to sort of delay here. Oh, what's going to be the easiest way to do this? I'm really not sure. That's a great idea, Evan. I love that. Yeah. Yeah, that's a fantastic idea. Yeah, I love that idea. Yeah, Evan says if the entry exists, put, if not post. That's a fantastic idea. Okay, so I am going to need to at some point, yeah, that's going to be the simplest thing that works. It's not going to be, yeah, okay, I love it. Let's do this. So, so here's the client dog. Okay, so now I'm going to get rid of my little console log from before here. So let's find the dog in our array here. So let's, in fact, let's rename this. Let's call this form dog because that's going to be the dog from the form. So let's see, is there an existing dog? So I'm going to go const dog search results equals dogs find calls to predicate once. Okay, cool. So I'll say local dog. Yeah. So, yeah. Yep. Yeah. Yeah, there's a couple little things about that it might fail if somebody tries adding a new dog that already exists, and yeah, and that's fine, and that's something maybe we could go back and readdress. But I think for right now, especially since we've only got about a half hour left, I think this is going to be a perfect fix for the moment. So yeah, so I'll say find, and then my predicate, so d dot name equals form dog dot name. Cool. So now if local dog perform a put. Otherwise, and then we'll leave it as a post. Yeah, I think for next week we might have to finally break down and start using something like Vue to help better manage this. So I'm just sort of moving everything around here. There we go. Boop-a-doo. Okay, that looks good. So now, so I've now moved all of that into post. Otherwise, put. So let's just make our lives a little easier here. And let's go ahead and do this. So now my method will be put, and this is now going to need the name of the dog to do this correctly. Okay, I'm going to talk about what I've got here in just a second. Yeah, okay. I've got a little bit of duplicated code. I'm not going to worry too much about it. That'll be all right. All right. So yeah, so here's what we've got going on. So on our form, again, prevent default, don't submit. So this way our validation runs. We're going to get our form. We're going to check validity, and then assuming that everything is valid, then we're good. So now we're going to get the data from our form. So we'll put that into a dog. And I don't know why I haven't done this before, but this should really be marked as dog. Yeah. So this should really be int. There we go. Okay. Sorry. Yeah, it was now yelling at me. So what I did is I told it that that's supposed to be a dog, which I should have been doing a while ago. So I've now updated that. So now this was yelling at me going, hey, age shouldn't be a string. Okay, fine. So now I'm converting it to be a number, which is what we want. So now that looks good. And then there's our description. And now, I'm curious about something. HTML, is there's not a number input element. That's disappointing. That's all right. So now I've got my name, my age, my description. Let's go ahead and see if the dog is in our array. If there is a dog, then we'll go ahead and we'll do a put. So this is going to be an update. There we go. So we'll update that. That's now going to call put and then post that up. whatever it is that we get back, we'll go ahead and now display it. And I also just want to make sure, if I call display dog, does that add that into the array? It doesn't. So I do need to make sure down here that we're also adding it in. So dogs push my server dog. Okay. Yeah, that looks really good. Okay, that looks good. I could probably do still a little bit more refactoring there, but that's all right. So what this is doing is this is now going to, again, look to see if there's one already in existence. If there is, then we're going to do an update. And if there's not, we'll go ahead and create a brand new item. And I think when we come back to this next week, it might be best for us to now start looking at using something like Vue, because this is now starting to get rather clunky, because now we're basing this on whether or not something already exists and so forth. So I think we've now reached that point where having a framework is going to become easier. So next week, I think we're going to go in and take a look at doing something with Vue. But that's all right. For the moment, this is okay. So yeah, so there is all of that. That all looks good. So now I just need to make sure that our server supports it. So let's make sure, first of all, that this is also going to support put. And then let's update our server code. Chugga, chugga, chugga. So that case put await update dog context break async function update dog context. And now let's see, what do I want? I want const dog equals context rec body as dog. There we go. And now I want dog model update, and this wants my conditions, so I can say the ID is going to be the nope, that won't work, but the name will work. Because again, our name is unique. So we'll say dog name, and then we'll go ahead and say dog, pass that in like that. And what does this give me back? This, I don't think this actually gives me back anything of use. Await, updated dog. Yeah, it doesn't give me back anything of use. Okay, that's fine. So I'm just going to go ahead and say await, and yeah, I think I'm going to be fine. And let's go ahead and context.res, and our status will be 203. There we go. Okay. So here's what we've got is we're going to go ahead and we're going to read the dog in from the body. So this is whatever it is that they sent up. We're then going to perform the update and then a 203. So we're just not going to return any data back. So that's now going to be our put, which on a related note, yeah, see again, this is like on the display, this is now where things are going to get really tricky because I don't have a nice two-way binding here. So what I would need to do is I would now need to go find the item inside of our display and update that. So here, let me talk about what I'm talking about here. Let me just restart my my server. So here's what I'm talking about is right now, if I go in and I update a dog here and I change their name, now what I need is an easy way to go back to the display and update that inside of the display. So now what I would then need to do is update my code here to go find it and modify it. Gosh, how might that even look? Yeah, it'd get tricky because I'd have to now like loop through all the child nodes and go find the value. And yeah, so I think we've now, I think we've now hit the point where we need a framework that Vue can do this like automatically for us, or React could do this as well automatically for us. So this is right now my problem, that if I update this, if I change this name, now what I need is I need two-way binding. So that way this name here would automatically be updated back here. So yeah, now Pete's back to troll me to say step one, use Angular. I'm gonna use Vue and that's gonna come next week. So yeah, if only the rendered information depended on a piece of state. Yeah, if only. Yeah. So I could also go in and start like binding it in and so forth. But I think TLDR on all of this is I think we've now reached the end of what we're going to be able to easily do with just basic JavaScript here. And we're going to need a framework. So yeah. So that'll come later. I'm not going to worry too much about that now. Could I force a page reload for now? Yeah, I could, but I'm not going to worry about it. I think for right now, I'm just going to leave that the way that it is, and yeah, okay. Let's just check to see if our page is working here. So let's mongoose a demo dog we created when we added mongoose to our application. Let's go ahead and see, like this is another thing that we would also need to go in and update as well. So let's go in and say register. I do still have a little bug here where it's not closing out that form, which I just need to go back and take a look at. And let's see. Oh, interesting. Okay. So it did update. Oh gosh. Right. Oh, this is hilarious. What a tangled web. So here's what I want you to now notice. Now I've got another binding issue. So here's what I want you to notice is this now works. So if I say Sammy, age of 2, description, Sammy is an adorable AM staff who loves to play at camp and bark at delivery people. You know, like a dog does. And then I hit register. This does in fact save. So now I go in and now I say Sammy, it's saved. This is now on the server. So it is in fact saving here. This does in fact work. But the problem that I have is that now when I come back into here, you're going to notice that my description is back to undefined. And the reason for that is because of the way that we bound this up. That the way that we bound this up, the way that we set up our form is we did it when we hit display dog here. So let's go in and do this. Band-aids, fetch the band-aids. Exactly. Let's do this. I'm going to throw in one last band-aid. Oh gosh. Load all dogs before each update. Yeah, exactly. Let's start doing that. That's a good idea. I love it. Maybe we just start creating our own MVVM framework from scratch here. Let's do it. Yeah, let's get right into that. This is hilarious. Yeah. What's going to be the easiest way to do this? Click set up the form. I'm just using the name as the ID for right now. So let's say function setup form name as a string. And now let's go ahead and say const dog equals dogs find d name equals name. And then we can go ahead and now we could do that. Yeah, I think this will work. Updated. Register. And then now, nope, that still doesn't work. Shoot. All right. Oh, because I'm not saving it back into the array. That's what my problem is. My problem wasn't, hold please. No, that's still not right. Why am I? Oh, I know what I'm not doing. That's hilarious. Okay. Hold please. Here's what I'm not doing is I was pulling it from the array. I wanted to load the dog from the server. So that's what I wanted to do. Async. This is what I was trying to do. This is why we created the get in the first place. So now const loaded or server dog equals await fetch API dogs API dogs boom boom name. There we go. See, this is what we were trying to do originally. And now I can go in and do this. Now, boom, boom, boom. Result. Hold on. I need to convert this into JSON. Const server dog equals await result. JSON. There we go. This looks better. Name is not defined. Dog name is defined. There we go. That looks better. Now let's try this. So now updated again, register, and now we come back. There we go. Okay, that's where my problem was. There we go. Now that's working. All right. yeah, the problem was is that we were still pulling it from local cache, which is not what we wanted to do in the first place. That what we've been trying to do is go grab that dynamically. It was why we built that whole get part of it. And there it is. So now this is properly working. So I just sort of have coffee. I just sort of forgot where I was. Okay, cool. Questions on any of that while I do a real quick git commit here. And we'll just push that out like that. So yeah, questions on any of that? All right, let's see. So we've updated the API. We did that. So we can put a check next to that. We updated the UI. So we can put a check next to that. We did in fact do our deployment. So we can put a check next to that. And then we certainly did debug, and that works. Yeah, you're welcome for solving that without a full refresh. Okay. I think every time my coffee cup crosses a keyboard, I cringe. Yeah. I have my desktop is over here, and the top is just a pure mesh. So then that way, air can flow in and out, which is fantastic. But I'm now just like really fearful of having liquid anywhere on my desk that doesn't have a cap on it, because I'm just petrified that I'm going to knock it that direction, and then that's just going to go spilling into that mesh, and then now I've just got a rather expensive paperweight. So yeah, I should probably just stick to closed lids and be done with it. At the very least, like, the keyboard is not overly expensive. It's really nice, but it's not overly expensive. So, but anyway, okay, cool. So I think I'm actually going to wrap up just a little bit early today. Typically we'll go for 2 hours, but I think at this point we've sort of now. We've hit an inflection point. We've hit a moment now where, when we go and we start to look at our code here, that things are becoming much messier than I would like. That I think we're really quickly starting to bump into the limits of what we're going to be able to easily do without using some form of a framework. And on top of that, I don't necessarily think I want to go much further without getting in a framework. And the framework that I'm going to use, with all apologies to Pete, is I am going to use Vue. That I like Vue. I've played around with it a little bit, and what I like about it is it feels a lot like Knockout to me, which is a relatively old MVVM framework. But what I really like about Knockout and what I really like about Vue is that it's much easier, I think anyway, to sort of add it into an existing app and to really just sort of use it where you want it without necessarily having to like redo everything just to start fitting in with like the routing and everything else that like Angular or React is going to give to you. Again, not to take anything away from those two frameworks. I think they're fantastic, but yeah. So and Pizza's never interested or never used Vue, interested to see it. So yeah. So I think that's what I'm going to do for next week is do that. So I think I'm I think I'm going to close this off now. And then next week we'll go ahead and we'll take a look at Vue. So two real quick things, or a couple of real quick things. Number one, again, I'm Geek Trainer on Twitter, so definitely come say hi to me and hook up there. Number two is we'll be back next week. HTTPS whack aka.ms code and coffee. So you can go check that out. If you like the video, please go ahead, hit like, hit subscribe, and all of that good stuff. So that way you can see what it is that I'm doing here and everything else that happens to be going on the channel. So please hit all the buttons if you feel so inclined. And thanks again for everybody who tuned in. It's great to see the familiar faces. It's great to interact with chat. Like I said at the outset of this entire series, this is very much just an experiment here, just to see if this type of thing works. So hopefully this will continue to grow. Our application will continue to grow, and maybe we'll finally hit a point where we go, hey, you know what, this is pretty cool. And now let's take a look at another tech like Django or something like that. So thanks to everybody for tuning in. Enjoy the rest of your Friday or Saturday, I guess, or sorry, Thursday or Friday. What is time anyway? Thursday or Friday, depending on where in the world you happen to be. And hope to see you again soon. So yeah, thank you. Bye.